After spending centuries butting heads, the nations of Europe began to look outside of their own boundaries and outside the territories of Europe to satisfy their thirst for expansion. Spurred by ideologies such as mercantilism and social Darwinism, the nations of Europe sought to increase their power and satisfy the growing demand for natural and luxury goods inside of these new, untamed and foreign nations. Explorers and expeditions were sent out en masse to discover and explore these new lands. Aside from satisfying their own material needs, the nations of Europe also saw it as prestigious to expand the sheer size of their empires by conquering vast tracts of land. It quickly turned into a race to see who could conquer the most and whose land was the most valuable. But enough of how colonialism began. Rather, we're here today to learn about how it ended. These strange new lands include Asia, Africa, and both North and South America. The hands of Europe quickly spread across the globe, getting a grip on every continent that they could. The influence and marks left by these countries is not forgotten. The nations that we will be studying today freed themselves of their colonial overlords through many different means, from peaceful protests to full-scale riots, and even changing possessions from one colonial ruler to another potential oppressor. The first nation that we will be studying today is India. India is located in Asia and was colonized by the United Kingdom in 1612. They were taken for their tea, spices, and dye, as well as an abundance of other resources that were unfamiliar to the British. They eventually gained their independence in 1947 through the non-cooperation movement led by Gandhi. Despite a few protests that broke into violence, their path to sovereignty was for the most part peaceful.
Indonesia, located in Southeast Asia, came under state rule by the Dutch in 1816. The Dutch benefited from sugar, spices, and coffee grown in the region, but the colony was taken over by the Japanese in World War II, and revolts after the war would force independence in 1950.
Bangladesh was colonized by the British in 1612 for just about all the same reasons that India was. They had the tea, dye, and spices that India also provided. However, Bangladesh makes for a rather interesting colonial scenario. You see, the British granted rule of Bangladesh to Pakistan, under which it was known as East Pakistan. It was rather hard for Pakistan to manage such faraway possessions, and eventually, under the same movement led by Gandhi, they became sovereign and were known as Bangladesh.
Nigeria, located in West Africa, was colonized by the British in 1900 for its reserves of rubber, coal, and tin. An Act of Parliament in 1960 would cause Nigeria to become independent in a peaceful manner.
The Congo was colonized by Belgium in 1908. Belgium took the territory for international prestige to show that they were capable of competing with the rest of Europe. Belgium was a small nation that wanted to gain more lands. In addition to this, the Congo had large reserves of rubber trees. However, the King of Belgium, Leopold, committed many atrocities upon the natives. Far later on in 1960, through peaceful referendum, the Congo was released as a peaceful state, and negotiations were rather smooth.
The Philippines, located in Southeast Asia, were taken over by the U.S. in 1901 for their strategic importance. After being taken over by Japan in World War II, they peacefully gained their independence in 1945.
Algeria was conquered by the French in 1830. The French had little reason to take Algeria except for land and prestige. In 1962, a peaceful referendum was reached and Algeria was released as a sovereign state through peaceful means.
South Africa, located in Africa, was colonized by the British in 1815 due to its abundance in diamonds and gold, as well as its strategic location. Misrepresentation of the African minority was a factor in its peaceful independence in 1950.
While Liberia did not endure centuries of brutal colonial oppression, there's still an interesting case worth discussing. Liberia was colonized in 1820 as a project by the American Colonial Society. The goal was to send slaves back to Africa in an attempt to alleviate the slave issue in America. This new slave-run colony would later go on to write its own constitution and become independent in 1847, but not after subjugating the natives of the region first. This subjugation of the natives led to civil strife and disorder for centuries to come.
French Indochina, located in Southeast Asia, was taken over by the French in 1893 for its rubber and access to China. After being taken over by Japan in World War II, Indochina split into 4 different countries.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this informative video by Stephen Stella and Eric Bauke.